Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Next, we've got a story that perfectly captures why you should always be careful what you ask for, especially if you're a micromanaging boss. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you won't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Boss insists I follow his rules to the second, gets furious when I actually do. Some quick explanation. I work for a huge company in the customer service department. My job is mainly emails, so a customer will call, speak to a colleague who will create an issue form and send it to the correct warehouse. I sometimes have to take calls when it's urgent or serious. Because of this, I can't always take my assigned breaks right on time. This will be important later. Last week, my manager left for a new job, which sucks because he was awesome, and the guy covering for him, let's say if someone dropped a car on his head, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. Anyway, right off the bat on the very first day, new manager, M, starts barking orders. I already knew him as a very good friend / colleague, worked under him for months. I'd previously spent 30 minutes talking to said colleague because M made her cry and hate the job. I used to carry out some extra jobs for the previous manager, but something had happened and I no longer wanted to do it. I informed my old manager, who understood. There were two of us doing this job. Let's call this colleague C. M basically questions people like it's an interrogation. I've gone as far as to say to people in passing, if I fart, I swear he'll expect me to tell him how it smells. M told me off on the second day for not taking my breaks at the correct time. I tried to explain that this isn't always possible. If I get an issue form 5 minutes before my break and it takes 20 minutes to fix, I'll just go for my break after and still have the same amount of time. M, that's not acceptable. You're expected to be available to take any issues outside your allocated break times. Me, I understand, but again, M, enough. I've already told you already. Let this be the last I hear of this. Okay. The following day, M approached C and told her she's expected to carry out the old extra task, and I am too. C, has M told you about extra task? Me, no, what's up? C, he wants us both to do, explains New Way. Me, yeah, I'm not doing it. I told the previous manager I was dropping it. C, okay. 5 minutes later, M messages me. The following is a copy and paste. M, C tells me you don't want to do the extra task. Why? Me, I have my reasons for not wanting to take on the responsibility. C, then please explain them to me, as I'm making a reasonable management request for you to support your team. Me, sure. I don't want to because it's not part of my role. I'm not obligated. I am underappreciated and I get nothing extra from it, and a few other private reasons I don't want to discuss. M, wow. Well, thank you for the support, OP. You're required to follow any reasonable management request given to you. I will pick this up formally with you. You will not be required to do anything that's not, as you put it, part of your job role from now on. Thank you. Me, you never formally asked me to. You told C to tell me. Couple more things were said, but not relevant. So yesterday, I get a call come through, which means it is important. Huge issue. I look at the time and it's 2:20 p.m. My break is at 2:30, but I take the call. Customer complains and explain the issue. I try to help. 2:29 approaches. Meet a customer. Sorry, I have to take my mandatory break now. I'll speak with you in 30 minutes and hang up the phone. Evidently, the customer called back, spoke to someone else, and put a complaint in place, which ended on M's hands. M calls me today asking, why are you so rude and unprofessional to the customer? That attitude is unacceptable and I will be taking this to HR. Me, and tell them what exactly? That you had threatened me to take my breaks at the correct second, and when I tried to explain the situation, you completely cut me off? I was following your demands, however unreasonable. You weren't willing to listen, so I acted according to your orders. M, regardless, I didn't mean it. You had to take it at the correct second. A few minutes either way would be acceptable. Me, that's not what you've said before, and I no longer wish to continue this argument. If you want to get HR involved, I'm happy to proceed. So now I'm waiting to hear from HR to see what the next step's going to be. I have the evidence compiled that he ordered me to take my break at the specific time, but God knows what'll happen. The best part is his immediate backtracking once you followed his instructions exactly. Suddenly, a few minutes either way is okay. Sounds like he realized he's in trouble, especially since you kept records. I'd be surprised if HR doesn't recognize he's the one in the wrong. Make sure they see the documented conversation. It's golden evidence. Good luck. And our second story. My shift is over. Karen demands I open a register off duty, so I bag her groceries instead. So I used to work for a grocery chain as a manager. One day, a different location in a neighboring city called my store and asked if we had any books of stamps we could spare as they ran out and weren't expecting more for a couple weeks. I said sure, and electronically transferred 20 books of stamps and said I'd drop them off after my shift. So my shift ended and I drove straight there. My house was not on the way, and walked in the company's manager uniform. I knew where the office was and walked upstairs, knocked on the door, and gave the manager on duty the stamps. Before I left, I decided to buy a 6-pack of beer and some snacks as I had the next 2 days off. I got in line and there were 2 registers open and super long lines for both. One of the cashiers was the manager on duty, and we obviously had the exact same uniform. I even still had my keys and box cutter on my belt and name badge on. The lady behind me said, "Hello," and I didn't turn around. She tapped my shoulder and I turned, and she lifted her arms up and gave me a WTF look. She said, "This is effing ridiculous. Look at these lines. Open up another register now." I didn't want to say I don't work here or I work at a different location because technically I did work there, and if I wanted to, I could use my credentials to sign on to their registers because I am a manager and our credentials work at any location. So instead, I said, "My shift is over. I'm not on duty, ma'am." Karen didn't like this response and started raising her voice, saying things like, "You're the effing manager. I don't care if your shift is over. You're getting paid no matter what, so open up a register. I'm not waiting in this line, and if I do, I will call corporate." She was wrong here. I wasn't getting paid no matter what, as my level of management was the step right below salaried. If I wasn't clocked in, I wasn't getting paid. In most other circumstances, and if the lady was polite instead of screaming at me, I honestly would have opened a register to kill the lines and just worked off the clock for a few minutes, no biggie. But because she was so rude, I just turned around and continued to ignore her screaming at me for the next 10 minutes we stood in line. Several people told her to shut up and to leave me alone. Once I checked out, I set down my items on the floor and began bagging Karen's $300 cart of groceries. She said, "What are you doing?" I smiled at her and said, "Oh, I changed my mind." Finished bagging, grabbed my stuff, and left. Never heard about it from corporate either. Not that I would have gotten in trouble anyway. The amount of "I don't care" that comes from Karen/Carls about people being off the clock is all the proof you need that not enough people have worked in retail, food service, or with the public in general. And our last story. Jerry the handyman took down my power lines and windows, so we took him to court. My family had always enjoyed living in our quiet suburban neighborhood. It was peaceful, with tree-lined streets and friendly faces, until Jerry moved in next door. Jerry introduced himself as the neighborhood's expert handyman, claiming he was skilled in everything from plumbing to roofing, and especially proud of his supposed prowess in tree trimming. Initially, we just laughed it off as harmless boasting, but little did we know how much trouble Jerry's inflated ego would cause. One bright Saturday morning, without any warning, Jerry decided to showcase his expertise by cutting down several large trees in his yard. These weren't small shrubs, they were massive mature trees easily over 40 feet tall. My dad watched nervously as Jerry tackled the first tree, and it came crashing down mere inches from smashing part of Jerry's own roof. Despite nearly causing catastrophic damage to his house, Jerry was undeterred. Emboldened, he moved on to a much larger tree dangerously close to our property line. My dad tried to reason with him, shouting cautiously from our deck, "Jerry, that one's too big. You should call a professional." Jerry waved dismissively, revving up his chainsaw, his arrogance apparent. "Relax, neighbor. I've got this." He most definitely did not. With one loud crack, the enormous tree came plummeting directly onto our property. The sound was deafening, followed immediately by a series of alarming snaps as the tree limbs ripped through our power lines. My mother screamed from inside the house as sparks flew, the electricity cutting out instantly. When the dust settled, we saw the true extent of the damage. The tree had torn a huge hole in our home siding and shattered several windows. Jerry emerged sheepishly from behind his fence, chainsaw still sputtering in his hand. "Well, accidents happen, right?" he said, trying to laugh it off. But my dad was not amused. He immediately called the police, who documented the incident thoroughly. Lawyers got involved soon after. Jerry stubbornly refused to admit fault at first, and it took months of back-and-forth legal proceedings and threats of further action for him to finally accept responsibility and pay for the substantial damages he'd caused. Instead of owning up and moving past it, Jerry took the entire incident personally, holding a bizarre grudge against our family. Suddenly, our previously peaceful neighborhood turned into a battlefield of petty annoyances and passive-aggressive acts. Jerry began throwing his dog's waste over our fence, littering our backyard. He'd rev up his oversized, obnoxiously loud truck late into the night, deliberately interrupting our sleep. My dad tried to approach him calmly one afternoon. "Jerry, can we just move past this? We've lived next to each other for a while." Jerry sneered back, "Maybe you should have minded your business about my trees, huh?" The harassment escalated to the point where we dreaded going outside or encountering Jerry at all. Finally, after enduring months of stress, interrupted sleep, and cleaning up after Jerry's dog, my dad had enough. He filed a lawsuit against Jerry for disturbing the peace and harassment. The court case brought our neighbors forward, each sharing their own Jerry horror stories. It became abundantly clear he wasn't just targeting us, he'd antagonized nearly everyone on our block. The judge sternly reprimanded Jerry, ordering him to cease his hostile actions immediately or face severe consequences. After months of suffering through his annoying tantrum, he finally put his house up for sale and moved. He wouldn't admit fault when he obviously cut down his own tree in his own yard and damaged your house? That's one hell of a defense mechanism. It's wild that instead of immediately apologizing like any sane person would, Jerry decided to make you guys his mortal enemies. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.